So remember how in my History of Black People in Long Beach video I told you that Henry McBride started the NAACP in Long Beach, and I listed other men's names that were co-founders with him, but then I said, but I can tell you that even though that there were no women's names on this list, women were absolutely integral in that struggle. I want to highlight these women who were absolutely integral in the fair housing struggle and what they did, because it's amazing. And it started here in Long Beach, but it had national implications. And I think that there are a lot of people who don't know about these ladies, even though you may know someone who was directly affected by their work. So let's get into it. So as you can see, these ladies are holding No on 14 signs. There's a big No on 14 sign there. And in my previous video, I talked to you about the Proposition 14 in 1964 as a reaction to the State Assembly and State Senate passing a law that made housing discrimination illegal in California. And this Proposition 14 was a backlash to that, to say, no, we should be able to discriminate. And it completely passed in California 2-1, including in Long Beach. So in response to that, the city of Long Beach formed the Long Beach Fair Housing Foundation in 1964. And its mission was devoted entirely to the promotion of fair and open housing practices in our community. And these ladies volunteered 30 hours a week with no pay. They had a newsletter that you could get for $2 a month, and the money from the newsletter was used to rent office space, and they were still volunteering 30 hours a week for free. The first thing they did was create a listing. This is before Excel. Where if you were a fair landlord or a fair person who wanted to sell a home, you could call their office or write and say, listen, I have a piece of property to rent or sell, and as long as the money's green, I don't care. And this could be a listing for African Americans who were looking for rentals or looking to buy in the city where they knew they would not be turned away by restrictive covenants or racist landlords. So by 65, they had placed 180 families. So 129 of those were homes for sale, 33 were for rentals. And they had an 80 household waiting list. So they kept going, and in 66 there was even more of a need for their services because the Navy decommissioned its yard in Brooklyn, New York, and moved a lot of those soldiers, many of whom were African American, to Long Beach. So now there were even more black people in Long Beach who needed housing, so even more reason for the need for the ladies' services. So they started doing like undercover work, which I think is so cool. They would send out a white applicant to pretend to be a potential buyer for a home, and once it was clear that the home was available, or pretend to be a potential renter, then they'd send a black person, and they would give them fake CVs so that it looked like they both made the same amount of money, they both had the same amount of education, and they would see what happened. Or they would see if the day after the white person went, when the black person went, the property owner or landlord lied and said, oh, it's already been sold, or oh, it's already been rented. So they did that kind of undercover work, which I think is so cool. They also did double escrow, where they would make up mortgage documents, escrow documents. Hold on, let me back up. A willing white participant who was selling a home would sign a sales contract with two people, one white, one black. the two people would have similar income, similar education, blah, blah, blah. The ladies would make sure all the I's were dotted and all the T's were crossed on both sets of mortgage documents. They would mail those mortgage applications into the same bank. They would see how long it took for the white person's documentation or to be approved for a loan compared to how long it took for the black person's. Frequently, there were all these kind of delays with the black person's application, even though they had the same financial ability to pay for the home. And the ladies would document these banks that were doing this delaying and the tactics that they were using to do this delay. So that was another one of their tactics. But they also sued people. When they had this stack of proof about how you were discriminatory, they would take you to court. And they were able to do this because one of the ladies convinced the city to give them $25,000 to file these lawsuits. They also submitted their binder of documentation to the Department of Justice in 1970, and in response to that, the Department of Justice could not deny this evidence. They investigated 8,000 rental agencies across the country because the evidence coming out of this group of volunteer black ladies was so strong that the Department of Justice could not deny that this was happening all over. And the ladies had given them the inside tactics of how exactly it was being done, and that aided in investigating nationwide. The Department of Justice in the end decided not to press charges against anybody. They just sent warning letters. That's a disappointment. But in one of the lawsuits, a couple was awarded $10,000 against a racist landlord, and that was the biggest award that had ever been given in such a lawsuit to date. So I just want you to see these ladies' faces, and if anybody knows more and has information on who these ladies are, if any of the adult children of these ladies you know for a fact are still alive, and you know the names of those adult children, please, please, please DM me, because I would love to get an interview with the adult children to tell me, to hear in person from them the stories of what their mom was doing.